What's going on, everyone? It's your girl Brittany, and I am here today once again to talk about depression and vulnerability in the church. Today is going to be a little bit different, the same subject matter, except we're going to get a different opinion on the topic.
I am Pastor Reggie James, one of the pastors at Light of the World Church.
I am Jessie James. I am an assistant to my husband, Pastor Reggie James, in Light of the World Church.
And I'm very thankful for them being on today and willing to share their voice on this topic that is quite difficult. And so today we're going to be speaking about what depression is, and we're also going to be defining what is the role of the church regarding members who are suffering from depression. So let us get into this conversation. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, through your studies and, what you've seen with those you've counseled, how would you define depression?
So I like definition just to be clear. And so I have a couple of notes, and in my notes I want to clearly define what depression is. So what is depression? Depression is a mental health disorder characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities, causing significant impairment in daily life.
It would be good to kind of state how a person would feel if they were depressed, and I think sometimes it a lot of times ties into numbness, not feeling, sadness, not being motivated. Sometimes it's the mundane. It's having a clouded mind. A lot of times it has a feeling of being afraid, maybe guilty or ashamed, like you lost something or you need something, or you need to avoid something. Even woe is me. Sometimes you feel that you have no hope. So I think those are things that people experience, and they try to define for themselves, what is it that I'm feeling, and they will call it certain things.
And that's good, like you said, try to define for themselves, which I would say we have to be careful, because depression has so many categories.
Right.
In clinical studies, you can go from 5 to 10, maybe more different types of depression. So when we speak of depression, we have to be careful even to self-diagnose or to put everything under the same umbrella of depression. I think there are danger points. So I would say for myself, like when we look at depression, I put down just 5. Not that we're going to go into all of them, but I put 5 just so that the audience can know what they may look like. So there is major depression, persistent depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder, which we call SAD, and postpartum disorder. Those are just a few.
Yeah.
Postpartum, people know usually from women that have given birth or are pregnant, and they just giving birth because it's postpartum, and you see a different change of mood.
They can sense it,
Yes, seasonal depression, which is sad. You get to see people, like most people have that type of depression through the fall and the winter when it's darker. So as you can see, depression can fall in so many gamuts, and based on what you're saying, some of them can mimic each other. So that's why it's important to really get diagnosed before we self-label.
We kind of live in a culture where self-diagnosis is kind of the most popular thing than going to an actual professional. But one of the things that we did talk about in our last video, kind of like our wrap-up of testimonies video, was major depression and seasonal depression. However, one thing that we kind of briefly touched upon was, having a moment and being bored, the difference between that and being actually depressed. What is the difference between what I would call situational depression versus actual depression? I know it varies in different categories, but major depression, I guess, in this case.
Well, situational depression kind of like says it all within the name.
Right.
It's situational, it's short-lived. It's an adjustment disorder, so depending on things that can happen to you, like a loss of job, a death in the family, those are situations that occur in your life, and you again feel just heavy. So and it can go from a span of maybe a week to a month, could even be a year. But again, it's situational.
It is real.
Yes.
And the things that you're going through are real.
Yes.
It's just, it wouldn't be chemical, it would be outside things that would affect what's going on
In your personal,
inside.
yeah.
And I think particularly with young people, sometimes that happens based on their current situation, whether it's stress from school, whether it's breaking up with a guy or a girl,
Yeah.
Whether it's friction with their parents,
Family divorce,
divorce,
So many.
money issues.
Yes.
It could fall into a lot of categories, right? But I think a big one for young people has to do with growing pains, in a sense, and that's a real thing.
Yes.
Different
Yes.
phases of life.
Different phases of
Yeah.
life, and particularly one of the latter phases of adolescence, you are naturally building an independence, and that's
Yes.
from God.
Yes.
For you to be able to get up and go and start to be dependent on God and yourself, and not so much on your parents.
And now your parents, yeah.
But that is a transition. So when you're getting to that stage,
Friction.
it acts out in a certain way,
Yes.
and your parents who need to grow in parenting a young adult
Yes.
also are adjusting to your new you,
Yes.
which is natural but very well may cause tension.
Right.
So that place that you're in where it's time for you to go, but you may not be totally equipped to leave yet, so you're still kind of dependent on them.
I like that.
Halfway trying to
Yes,
go
yeah.
on your own.
And then they may be in a place where they're wanting you to go, recognizing that stage, still playing catch up emotionally and mentally themselves, and preparing for you to leave. And then there's situational things that happen within
Yes, I
that
see that.
causes things, and that can be a series of things that are playing out even for a couple of years, and that can be tough.
Which I like your example, because I think with teens that are
Or even young adults.
young adults, they're living at home. Now things are playing out a specific way where their parents have a level of control, and the kid, the young adult also, can't move freely. So now there could be an oppressive kind of emotional sense that they feel like, I can't do anything, or I can't be, and then they start feeling this heaviness, and it's the fact that they can't break free from that independence and feel the shackles sometimes, brings a level of maybe what we would say in homes, moodiness from that young adult, that can also be misconstrued and thought that it can be depressive,
Right.
or depression in that sense, but it's just, again, situation.
How can young adults, or I guess just people in general, because people go through those different things at different phases of their life, how can they be able to tell like the difference between this is just something that's going on right now at this moment and this is causing me to feel this way versus, you know, clinical depression?
Wonderful question. And because we're speaking of seasonal, seasons change, right?
Right.
Young adults, teenagers get older, they start getting more autonomy, more independence. It's almost like a person who can't drive. They're 16, they get their learner's permit, but they're not allowed to go on their own yet in the car. But all of a sudden now they have their actual license, and they start to realize, oh, now I can take the keys and go somewhere independently of my parent. You realize that there are shifts in your time, that you can do things, and now you realize you're not stuck in your home where you can be in your room and tend to close yourself off, and then you pout. That can be a moment that you can confuse that as depression.
Right, you said moment. That's the key word. A moment. Yeah.
And then you get to be able to be independent, take those keys and drive. There are shifting moments that you recognize, oh, it's just that I was bored, or I couldn't have that independence, and now I have that freedom.
Yeah.
You can recognize that one. compared to a persistent heaviness that you stay locked, no interest, no desire, no motivation.
And that's like regardless of what's going on.
And that is
around you.
regardless of what's going on. And that's the easiest way to tell when there is no movement.
Yeah.
You know, that's when you realize, no, I think this is something different. You just want to stay in your bed or just stay slumped. Those things start to become more visible if they don't have a mask of smiling everything away. So
if you're real,
yes,
you can tell.
And I think to add to that, it would also be self-analyzing. I think we're all supposed to take stock,
Yes.
take inventory of what we're going through all the time, and ask ourselves real questions. What is bothering me? And I think when we can identify what is bothering us, we can write that off at times to situational.
Yes.
When there is where we don't understand what's bothering us and we're just feeling a certain way all the time, it may be something more serious.
Yes.
But it also may be, I just don't know that it's this. And
Can't put the finger on it. You can't
right.
label it.
And I
Yes.
think it's not only parents and you wanting to leave, it's what am I going to do next? Am I equipped to do what I've been thinking about I wanted to do in the future? What school I'm going to go to, if I'm going to go to the military? What kind of job? Can I support myself? There are so many different aspects, and in a spiritual way, you are starting to walk from under the umbrella of protection spiritually of your parents, and now you're walking into your own, where our relationship with God is always personal, but when we start to have autonomy and are responsible for our actions and have more freedom to make our own choices.
Yes.
Now it's like me and you, God. And that's
Yeah.
a newer thing too, because you don't have someone else kind of monitoring what you're
kind
doing.
of like your foundation.
Right. That and kind of having you know a certain concrete consequence.
Yes.
Because now it becomes more abstract when you're dealing with God.
Right.
And an example of that, because we tend to minister to youth, I'm going to remove the youth aspect of it. For myself, I remember moving to Pennsylvania from New York. And at that time when we moved here, my children, we only had 2 at the time, were 2 and 1. And he was commuting to New York. So I am in a new state, in a new environment. I didn't have anybody. We moved here, we knew no one. And I found myself at night asking him in bed, do you like it here?
Projecting like how you feel in a question.
Projecting a question mark. And he would say to me, what would you say?
I like it just fine, and you like it too. We already bought this house.
We already bought this house.
That's it.
So that was it. We're
We
here.
discussed this
we
before.
discussed it long before. And I found, and we moved here, it was Christmas Eve. So it was the winter season. I found myself in a seasonal depression.
Seasonal, right.
For me, it was seasonal. Why? Because everything just changed. I was in a new home, in a new state. It was winter time, and I, with little children that I had to entertain in a new place that I was like, I know nothing here.
Right.
It was seasonal. You asked me today, do I want to go back to New York? Do I love it here? 27 years, 23 years here? I'm fine now. But that was a moment. And I had to understand, okay, this is gonna pass. Everything is new. So I had to analyze it and then recognize what it was and adjust. So that would be considered seasonal.
Right. As you guys are saying this, I'm just like thinking about how common it is for people to say that they are depressed when really it's just a change and a shift in their life. And it really is important to do that whole self-evaluation just all the time, because you never want to diagnose yourself with an ailment that, depression isn't fun. Depression isn't something you just want to just throw around. And so, one more time, I think it would be really good for us to re-establish what depression is, just for everyone, because we talked about so many different things, the different categories of it, and what can lead to you feeling that way, or what can lead to you actually going through it. But I think it would be really good if we defined it just once more.
The actual definition of mental depression is a mental health disorder characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities causing significant impairment in daily life. I will add to that, because it's clinical in that aspect, is that there can be genetic factors that contribute to your mental health.
Yep.
There can also be major life events, traumatic, such as rape, that can cause a sense of loss, personal, life-changing, life-altering. So this is why there are life events outside of chemical imbalance, life events that this is why it's a serious thing that we should take, because at that point we should seek help.
Right.
At that point, even, yes, self-evaluation, but go beyond at this point and say, you know what, this isn't something to take lightly or sleep it away. At that point we should seek help, and there are great counselors that can help you in that, navigate that time of your life.
And I would say, if you don't really know a counselor to reach out to, you could start with your pastor. You could start with the leaders that are at your church who can guide you to those resources. I think we all sitting here would just agree, seek someone who can give biblical counsel when you're feeling that low, rather than a friend who, may be comforting to you at the time, but they could just be repeating back the same things you're saying to them, rather than giving you the counsel that you actually need. So definitely, I agree. Don't say to yourself, self-evaluation can only last for so long until you actually need to reach out to someone. So definitely, we're advocating for reaching out. Thank you guys for listening and taking time to be a part of this conversation on depression. Stay tuned for part 2, where we discuss what is the role of the church and how are they to serve those suffering from depression. Be sure to follow Pastor Reggie and Miss Jessie on Instagram at Ablaze Youth Group LWC and their YouTube channel, Ablaze Youth Group. Once again, be sure to check out part 2 once it drops. So, see you then.